friends, and thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives. Of course, I'm Cam Hale, and as always, sitting with me today is mi amigo, Mr. Kyle Filson.
How's it going, everybody? I hope everybody's doing good. I have had a very interesting day. I've been doing these continuing education courses for my job.
He's been dragging it out, folks, because he's putting it off.
Yeah, I've been putting it off for too long. And something very interesting happened while I was doing it. I started noticing that my littlest boy, Luke, he's 4. He kept singing this song. I'm like, what is he listening to? He knows how to operate an iPad pretty good for a 4-year-old. I mean, he can get on YouTube and he can search up anything. He was listening to like Flow Rider.
Oh, great.
He had found this song, and I'm like, what is this? And I'm looking at it, and I'm making sure there's no bad words or anything in it. There wasn't. But then like 10 minutes later, I start hearing that song in my head. Don't you hate that?
Yes.
When you hear a song in your head, I'm like, I can't even concentrate because now I keep hearing this song.
I can one-up you on that. You think your day was going bad. I got one better for you on that deal, man. I did not know. I've never been in the past. Apparently, I have, at my age, I have maybe become recently, I guess you could say, allergic to maybe poison ivy or poison sumac or poison oak or
good.
Whatever. I have no idea. But I was doing a little work around the house, and I'd actually gotten some wood, to like some reclaimed wood. I'm going to build a desk out of it from some friends, and they had, I don't know where they had actually pulled it out of, wherever their place was, but I had moved it the other day and wasn't thinking anything of it, and the next thing I know, I got this rash comes up behind my ear, and then it goes on my left side, right? And then it goes down like the back of my neck, and that's what it's got to be. I'm like, oh, great. So then I'm like, oh, well, now it's somehow when I did it, I have a touch, on the back of my neck.
Right.
It's also in the corner of my left eye. So now that's driving me nuts. And that's true. It's on my private parts, too. I've got it all over my meat and 2 fruit, my twig and berries, my wedding tackle. I have got some sort of poison ivy on there. So, folks, Kyle's singing crazy songs. I have got my junk all swole up from some sort of rash. We're having a wonderful day. Hope everybody's time is going better than ours.
And the week is starting out awesome,
It just started, yeah. This is how Monday stomps you in the teeth. I'll tell you what, I got something cool here. Let's jump into this. Enough talk about us. Hell with it. Here we go. This was actually, I found this on Lon's site. We've been talking to Lon back and forth, and if it ever works out, we'll try to get Lon to come on and visit with us or whatnot. But I was looking around there, and he had actually pulled this up. Now, this is something interesting. This actually come from Coast to Coast about a week or so ago, and it happened to a lady here in Dallas, and she called and said this is what happened to her when she was a young girl. Now, everybody loves time slips. We all love the idea of this. This is something along those lines, but it's a little bit, I guess you could say, more eerie. I'm going to read this to you, and I want to see what you think about this. It says, when I was not even a teenager, my parents put me in my room to punish me as a punishment. And I was supposed to be in that room. Well, it got really quiet in the house, and I thought they had all just gone outside, my brothers and my sisters. So I got up, like most kids would do, and I'm sure she's sneaking around. She says, I walked through the living room and out the front door. There was nobody in the house, so I just assumed they had all went outside because it was summertime. Well, when I stepped out the door, I was somewhere else. When I looked around, everything was burned and charred, and I could see tall buildings across the way with dead people hanging out of the windows. The trees were burned, and I didn't really understand it back then, but really as an adult, when I grew up and everything, I realized I was seeing the results of a nuclear blast. I mean, everything was gone. I looked down at the ground to see if I could see a bug crawling, and there was nothing. And when I looked down to see, because I couldn't hear a cricket, I couldn't hear anything, when I looked at my feet, I saw that I had on some sandals like I'd never seen before, like the kind that laced up my legs, and my dress was tattered at the ends like I had been somewhere dirty. And that scared me. I was really, I don't know what to do, so I just turned around and ran back into the house and turned around, the door was gone, and I was back in another place, back at home. The house wasn't even there. It was gone, and I didn't go any further than just out, standing on the porch. So I decided just to back up, and I reached behind me until I felt the doorknob. And that's when I felt the doorknob, it turned. I got the door open, but I was terrified. I was leaning against the door, breathing, and all of my brothers and sisters were sitting in the living room, and they started screaming, "Mom, Debbie sneaked out of the window." They thought I had sneaked out, you see, but I didn't. I walked right past them, but they weren't there. And now suddenly, when I backed up and hit the door and I came back in, they were all in the room. My parents, they went and checked on the window, and they said, well, it couldn't be. I could see that the window had never been opened. It wasn't even left open, none of that. Said, I never went out the window. I went straight out the front door. Now I ended up getting in more trouble for that. Now, what do you think about that, Philly?
Man, that's an incredible story, right?
So she comes outside. She sees all this. She looks around. Houses are gone. She turns around. Her house is gone behind her.
Yeah.
She's trying to go through the door. She can't. So she just starts backing up with her hands behind her till she feels the doorknob. Opens it, pops in the door, and now she's back in there with her family. How crazy is that, man? Like she said, it's like she walked right by them. But they weren't there. Yeah. And then what she saw sounds terrifying.
Wow.
I always think of this, man. You seen the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I think about that whenever he goes to hell and you can see what it looks like. That's what I pictured whenever she was talking about that, is what it must have looked like.
Yeah, that's what I think of, right?
Messed up, right? Anyway, I thought that'd be a fun way to kick it off because it's just a really neat time slip.
Man, I love
if you want to call it a time slip. I don't really know. Maybe a future slip.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That is bizarre. Did you see this recently on The Telegraph? This is a pretty neat article. They were talking about how Japan's getting ready to prepare for its 5th anniversary of the magnitude 9 earthquake and tsunami. Remember how it took out that nuclear plant and everything? Oh, yeah. And they say that taxi drivers working in towns in northeast Japan that were devastated in March 2011 during the earthquake and tsunami are now reporting that they're picking up ghost passengers.
Whoa, what?
That's pretty cool, right? It says at least 7 drivers in the coastal town of Ishinomaki, where nearly 6,000 people died after it was battered by the tsunami, more than 30 feet high, claim to be having encounters with phantom fares. The men were among more than 100 drivers interviewed by Yuka Kudo, a student of sociology at the Tohoku Gaoken University, as part of her graduation thesis. And she said that one of the men told her that a woman climbed into his taxi near Ishinomaki Station just a few months after the disaster. She asked him to go to the Minamihama district, to which the driver said there was nothing left standing there. The driver recounted that the woman asked, "Have I died?" And when he turned to look, his taxi was empty. Now another driver, directed to a different part of the city by a man who appeared to be in his 20s, similarly found himself alone in his vehicle when he arrived at the destination. Now, Ms. Kudo's research indicates that the men were convinced that they were picking up genuine fares, and then as they started their meters and drove down the road, they noticed that the experiences began to look different. They even had some of this logged in their books, but when they got to the final destination, the passengers were no longer in the car. So that's pretty interesting, don't you think?
That's very strange, yes.
You hear this every once in a while, people picking up like these ghost hitchhikers.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never heard of taxi drivers actually picking up people in this area where they know a tsunami happened. A lot of people died. They said that there's many cases of this happening. At least 19 different people have come forward, I think, to claim that they've picked up a ghost fare.
That's pretty awesome.
Really?
Seriously, that's awesome.
Really bizarre.
That is really... Now, I don't even want to tell you this because that right there is so cool. I mean, that's... Makes me think of, what is it? David Allen Coe's The Ride. Or Red Sovine's Phantom 309. Yeah, that's what it makes me think of. Hey, Brett, I was looking at stuff for the garden, doing some garden talk, and I've been chit-chatting about chickens and chicken coops and all that stuff. This is on Popular Science. This is pretty neat. I didn't even think this was even a possibility. Get a load of this. Damaged tomatoes could provide electricity. That's what it says.
What?
It says that even though technically it's still winter, temperatures are rising, and summer is coming. And that means that in addition to beaches and pools, it says we can all look forward to the attack of the ripe, wonderful tomatoes. This is Miss Mary Beth Griggs writes this, and this is neat. It says, but not all tomatoes make it to the kitchen. It says, while some will be fried, green, cooked down into sauce, or meet their soulmates and bacon and lettuce, it says some tomatoes just go to waste. Damaged or disfigured to the point where farmers decide to throw them away instead of selling them. But now there might be a way to put those waste tomatoes to use. New research presented at the annual meeting of the American Chemical Society demonstrated how to turn waste tomatoes into Watts tomatoes using a chemical reaction to generate electricity.
How much electricity are we talking about?
Well, listen here. Now, this is Namita Shrestha. Now, she says this here. Now, she says that we have found that spoiled and damaged tomatoes left over from the harvest can be a particularly powerful source of energy when used in a biological or microbial electrochemical cell. The process also helps purify the tomato-contaminated solid waste and associated wastewater. Now, here's how she says it works. Researchers put tomato waste in a cell with specialized bacteria that breaks down the tomatoes. And when the microbes interact with the tomato waste, they oxidize the tomatoes, releasing electrons. Those electrons can get trapped in an electrochemical cell that's almost like a battery. And they use this new method. Now, theoretically, the volume of annual tomato waste in Florida is 396,000 tons. And that right there, with that waste, said could power Disney World for 90 days.
Are you kidding? Wow.
Yeah. It says right now,
I was expecting it to be something like really small, like you could light up a light bulb or something.
It is. It says right now the amounts of power produced is very low. 0.3 watts or 10 milligrams of tomato waste.
I got you.
But it says keeping tons of tomatoes out of landfills also has other benefits. It keeps tomato waste, it says, from leaching into the local water supplies, and it also prevents them from breaking down into methane. So this is a step that they're going to start doing, like Mr. Fusion from Back to the Future. This is the next step of where they're going to get their power from. Now, they said this is theoretically. That's how much they get rid of in Florida. So it could, if they had the ability to do it now on that scale, all that Florida goes would power all that. I'm picturing something as it goes along. How long? 10 years? 20 years before it's at your home? And you use your compost to create electricity along with solar and with wind. So it's 100% renewable over and over and over.
It's a good thing. I mean, I remember I grew up in the country. And, recycling wasn't a thing out there.
Yeah.
You burned your trash. Mostly
exactly.
What wasn't there, you came and had it hauled away. And when I moved to the city, actually when I decided to go to college, and ever since then I've lived in the city, but they had this recycling. And so at first it was a real pain in the neck. I was like, oh my God, I got to separate this plastic from the... But, now that I've been doing it for so long, it doesn't bother me at all. It just seems like a natural thing. So I think it would be cool to one day be able to have, like you're saying, a Mr. Fusion or something in your kitchen, like a trash compactor, and you throw these vegetables in here, and then you'll throw some in a different bin, and then you use that, convert that, in addition to solar panels and wind generators, and you do this, and you become self-reliant in producing your own energy. I think that would be cool. I mean, it's not going to work for you. You hate tomatoes.
I love growing them. I just don't eat them.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Have you seen this? Now, this is pretty interesting. This comes from the National Geographic Society. For at least 3,339 years, nobody has seen what lies behind the west and north walls of the burial chamber of Tutankhamun. But the secret of the 3 millennia might not last much longer. On Thursday, Mamadou El-Domadi, an Egyptian antiquities minister, held a press conference in Cairo to announce a tantalizing new piece of evidence, Cam. Radar scans on those walls have revealed not only the presence of hidden chambers, but also unidentified objects that lie within those secret rooms. And these objects, El-Domadi said, seem to be composed of both metal and organic materials. They say it could be the discovery of the century. He can't speculate any further about what lies in those chambers, but he said that another radar test has been scheduled for the end of this month in order to determine the best way to proceed with the investigation. Now, King Tut's tomb was first discovered by archaeologist Howard Carter back in 1922, and the tomb of King Tut yielded an astonishing array of grave goods. More than 5,000 artifacts were found then, and all of them were in pristine condition. This was the most intact royal tomb ever found, providing Egyptologists with an unprecedented glimpse into the material life of a king who ruled during the 14th century BC. But now, it's almost 100 years later since that discovery, and everyone, including myself, thought that Carter completely excavated that tomb and removed all the artifacts. But that's not true. It appears that they didn't finish the excavation, and no one knew it.
It's because of the curse we covered. The curse was killing them off.
I guess so. They said in July of last year, a man named Nicholas Reeves, a British archaeologist who specializes in the Valley of the Kings, published a paper claiming that there may in fact be another tomb hidden behind the walls of Tut's burial chamber. Now, Reeves, when he did this, it was just a theory, and this was based on close examination of high-resolution laser scans of the tomb, which seemed to indicate traces of possible passageways and door openings that had been plastered and painted over during the final preparations of King Tut's chamber. Now, initially, Reeves' paper was dismissed by Egyptologists, of course. They're like, what is he talking about? He's crazy. So they just got a wild hair. And they said, you know what? Look, it's not going to cause any harm if we could get some kind of wall-penetrating radar. Just take a look, you know? What if I'm wrong?
Yeah,
if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Around. Yeah, why not?
Turns out they hired this Japanese radar specialist, and he came to Luxor, and they spent 2 evenings conducting radar scans of the west and north walls of King Tut's, and lo and behold, there are secret chambers.
Yeah.
See, Carter never knew this. When he finished his excavation of the tomb, he thought that was it. He's like, yep, that's it.
Well, I'm glad you're touching back on this. Remember, we talked about this a month or two ago.
Yeah.
That they had scanned it. So now they're going to move forward with this. They're going to move forward with looking into this.
Yes, they are right now seeking permission from the Egyptian government.
Yes.
To go ahead and do this. Because, like we talked about when we did the Pharaoh's Curse and stuff, there's numerous tombs they found in Egypt, but most of them have been raided by grave robbers.
Yes.
That's what made King Tut's tomb so special, is it was completely untouched.
It was untouched, yes.
And they thought, that's what I love this story. They thought they finished it, but it turns out that there are secret chambers. There's going to be more artifacts found.
I can't wait to see what comes out of it.
I hope they do it live, kind of like when they did on Geraldo River Ray's show when they had, what was it, Al Capone's tomb.
His vault, when it opened up, they went in like old newspaper and dust.
But you remember that. We could watch it live. I hope they do something similar to that, a pay-per-view or something, because my fear is, these people like Zahi Hawass, you've heard of these deals. I'm not saying he has, but I've heard of these stories where these people go in there, they take a lot of these things, and then they're sold on the black market.
Yes.
I hope that doesn't happen.
Well, you brought up a good point. Why don't they do it like a pay-per-view? You're telling me that, okay, let's say that they crowdfund the money that they need, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that they GoFundMe the money that they need to get this thing going.
Right.
Then they sell it on pay-per-view, whether you can stream it. I mean, make it where it's an online stream. That's even more money. Because you're telling me I would pay money to watch them go in there and start doing all that stuff. Where you're going in there with them, you tell me they can't film some crazy streaming and then also have it all on GoPro, so later on the people that invested it get it, whatever they edit together, and then they go in there and do it. Get Christopher Garantano to go over there with you. He's the one that did Montauk. Let him film it and do all that stuff.
You're right. You're 100% right, because with the technology, you're exactly right. You're thinking along the same things I am. Anybody can go to a museum, but it's the same experience that's been going on for hundreds of years. You go there and you look at an artifact. How cool would it be to be able to, unfortunately, like this virtual reality Oculus Rift is just in the beginning, but how cool would it be for you, like you're saying, to buy a 4K pristine video for $39, whatever, and you get to actually experience the first-person feeling of what it would be like to enter this tomb.
Yes.
That's been enclosed for thousands of years. You get to feel that feeling. How cool would that be? That's exactly awesome. The way it looks. It would just be really interesting. I think they should do that. And then also, once they remove all the artifacts, I'm sure that they'll go on tour, just like the Ramses exhibit. You remember going to that when we were in high school? But I think it would be cool to use technology, today's technology, to give everybody the first-hand experience of what it would be like to open that. Because I've often read these books. How many times when you were a young man reading these books and you're reading about Tutankhamun and all these other stories, I'm picturing in my mind, man, how cool must it have been to find a chamber like that? Yes. You're like, look, dude.
All the time.
No one's been in this room since it was sealed, and you get to have that experience. How cool is that? Well, now you could. At least you'd get the experience of what it was like.
Yeah, exactly. I do it all the time. That's why we're such big fans of Indiana Jones. Imagine you're living in that time, except you don't get to go, so what's the best thing?
Yeah, well, keeping with archaeology, let's take a break, and when we get back, I'm going to be discussing some strange spheres found in Costa Rica. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. And we're back with expanded perspectives. Before the break, Cam, I mentioned I'm going to be talking about these stone spheres of Costa Rica. Are you familiar with these? Have you ever seen the pictures of these?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen them.
They are pretty interesting, I have to
Nice.
admit. I urge everybody to go. I'll put links to it in the show notes, but you can also just do a Google search on your own. Just type in stone spheres of Costa Rica. You'll
When
see
I
them.
work out with those.
Right, yeah, these are like giant kettlebells.
Yeah, I grab like the Atlas stones and I pick them up and I set them on top of those things.
Well, these things they're huge, perfectly made spheres. And, of course, there's a lot of conjecture of what happened, how these came to be, that aliens built these, or they had some kind of secret science that we're not aware of. That they
Pre-Columbian CrossFitters.
Yeah, people that it's unattainable. We today, much like the Mitchell Hedges skull, you're told these stories where we couldn't even do it today. Cam, you couldn't even make the sphere today. Yeah. It turns out that a lot of that's not true. But one of the strangest mysteries in archaeology, it was discovered in the Dequy Delta in Costa Rica back in the 1930s. And there's hundreds of these stone balls that have been found so far, and they've been documented, ranging in sizes from only a few centimeters, like the size of a marble, like that jam-up marble collection we were talking about the other day.
That's right.
To over 2 meters in diameter. And some of them even weigh up to 16 tons. And almost all of them are made up of granodiorite, which is a very, very hard stone. The objects are definitely monolithic sculptures, and they were definitely made by human hands. Now, there's a man named John Hoops, and he wrote a book called Debunking the Mystery, the Costa Rican Stone Balls. Pretty interesting. And in that book, he talks about how these objects have always been presented as pseudoscience and speculatory ever since the publication of Eric von Daniken's book Chariot of the Gods in 1971. And more recently, they've gained new attention by the result of some other books like Atlantis in America by an Ivor Zapp, and George Erickson's book The Atlantis Blueprint by Colin Wilson. There's all these books, and these authors have been featured on television shows, radio shows, magazines, web pages, where they do an incredible disservice to the public by misrepresenting themselves and the state of actual knowledge about these objects. Me and you talk about this all the time privately. Mm-hmm. People don't so much lie as they over-embellish these things, these artifacts, to make it seem like it's more than it is. Look, I'm a fan of Ancient Aliens, this TV series. When I watched it, I remember the first time I really fell in love with it. Till you start looking into it, you start looking at the claims, and you start realizing, wait a minute, they're not really lying to you, but they're also not really telling you the entire story either.
Yeah, they just tell it just enough to make what they want to be broadcast or put out there. Yeah.
Right. Now, some of these authors are often represented as having discovered these objects. And the fact is that they've been known about to scientists since they first came to light during agricultural activities by the United Fruit Company back in 1940. Now, archaeological investigations of the stone balls began shortly thereafter, with the first scholarly publication about them appearing all the way back in 1943. They are hardly a new discovery, they say, nor are they especially mysterious. In fact, archaeological excavations undertaken at sites with the stone balls in the 1950s found them to be associated with pottery and other materials that were pre-Columbian cultures from southern Costa Rica. Whatever mystery, this is what John says in his article, whatever mystery exists has more to do with the loss of information due to the destruction of the balls than their archaeological context, than the lost continents, ancient astronauts, or transoceanic voyages. Now, you may be asking yourself where these things are found. Now, they're originally found in the delta of the Taraba River, also known as the Serpe de Quy, or General River, near the towns of Palmar Sur and Palmar Norte. Now, the balls they've also been found far north of the Estrella Valley, and far south as the mouth of the Codo, Colorado River. They've been found near Golfito and the Isle de Cano. They're basically from all over various parts of Costa Rica. They've been found in different sizes. Now, what's the saddest part of this story is that since their discovery in the 1940s, these objects have been prized as lawn ornaments, and they've been transported, primarily by railway, all over Costa Rica, and now they're found throughout the country. There are 2 balls on display to the public, even in the U.S. One is at the Museum of the National Geographic Society in Washington, D.C. The other is in a courtyard near the Peabody Museum of Archaeology at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, like we talked about at the beginning, they're made of mostly granodiorite. And there are a few examples of them being made of coquina, which is a hard material similar to limestone that is formed from shell and sand And this is mostly found in beach areas. And it was probably brought inland, they think, and that's where they were made. Now, there's approximately, that's been found, 186 balls, according to a 1963 publication.
That's a jam-up collection.
Right? But they're estimating that there may be several hundred more that just haven't been found, or they're dispersed throughout Costa Rica and just you don't know about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be the size of a pool ball or a soccer ball or whatever. And somebody might find it, oh, that's cool, and they keep it in their yard. And then no one's ever said anything about it. They don't know. They don't
just
have a way
in
to
somebody
report
else's backyard.
Right? They also say that they've been removed and taken, just like the two that are in the United States. They've been dispersed all over the world. So there's no telling how many there are.
Well, and that's a big bummer. That's a huge bummer, because unless you find them in the ground or where they're at, in situ, it's hard to do anything with them. You know, it's hard to say what the history is of these things.
Yeah. Now, the balls, they said, were made, most likely, they're theorizing this, by reducing round boulders to a spherical shape through a combination of controlled fracture, pecking, and grinding. Now, granodiorite, from which they are made, has been shown to exfoliate in layers when subjugated to rapid changes in temperature. So they think that the balls were heated up, probably put on a bed of coals to be superheated, and then they were cooled off instantly with cold water, which would cause it to actually exfoliate in layers, the stone.
Kind of like an onion. You're talking about it just flaking off.
And when they were close to a spherical shape, as close as they think they could get to it, they would stop that process and then start pecking and hammering with stones made of a similar hard material, and then finally polishing it to a high luster.
That's a lot of work, right?
It is a lot of work. Now, they process that they're using, they said they found that this culture's, whoever it was using a similar method to make stone axes, elaborate stone statues, and they said they could do all this without the help of metal tools. They definitely didn't use laser beams, and they didn't use alien life forms to help them do it. This is something that's totally possible by humans.
Yes.
Now, it might have taken a lot of work, and just because it's hard doesn't mean it's not impossible.
And we're not saying that they maybe they were taught by laser-toting aliens. Who knows?
Well, there's always that possibility, of course. But it seems to me that it was probably made just by people that were great stone workers. Mm-hmm. Now, the biggest question of all is, who made them? That's the biggest mystery. And the sad part is, we don't know who made them. It could have been the Olmecs. It could have been the Aztecs. It could have been the Mayans. It's believed by mainstream scientists that the balls were most likely made by ancestors of native people who lived in that region sometime prior to the Spanish conquest. But it's still unknown, because dating these things is very difficult. The only way that they've been able to date anything so far is when they find them buried in the strata that they're buried with. Some that has organic material with it, they can date that. So they've been found, some of them alongside pottery or broken pot shards. And they, of course, the pottery that they found alongside of these balls belonged to this Aguas Buenas culture, which their dates when they were around ranged from 200 BC to 800 AD. And some of them have been found with other pot shards that are far older. But even this, like we've described before on the show, doesn't necessarily reveal their true age. I remember on a show we did one time with Frank Joseph, you had been mentioning, you were talking about Nam Vidal, and you were talking to him about how it was like throwing down a Snickers wrapper, and then years later, another archaeologist coming and finding that Snickers wrapper and saying that the structure must have been built in 2016 because that's when they found the wrapper.
Yeah.
So just because, this is the same thing, just because you find pottery shards from 200 BC with these stone spheres, it's difficult for me to say, well, that's how old the stone spheres are. They might have been far older too.
Yeah, you have no idea.
They found them and they're like, that's a cool lawn ornament, and they just like rolled it up by their house.
Exactly. Maybe they were eating dinner around it or something, picnicking around it, something like that. Yeah.
All they know that the balls they weren't created after the first Spanish explorers arrived. They know that. So whoever these people were that made these things, it's pretty cool. Now, they say that many of these balls, get this, were found to be in alignments consisting of straight and curved lines, as well as triangles, parallelograms. And one group of 4 balls was found to be aligned in the line. One group of 4 balls was found to be arranged in a line oriented to magnetic north. So this has led to some people speculating that they might have been arranged by people who had knowledge of magnetic compasses. They're aligning them with astrological alignments, like other many places in the world. But unfortunately, so many of these balls have been moved around that scientists can't study that because
you never know where they came from.
They've been moved.
Yeah.
So if they were all in astrological alignment, say, or made to look like shapes, like the Nazca lines, or this one was like a monkey, We don't know that because they've all been moved.
I always think about what if it was like a star map on the ground, and it was the whole thing, the whole ball system was a star map, and now it's been completely destroyed.
Yeah. They said that a lot of them have been damaged because people thought that there could be gold in them, so people would be cracking them open to see what was inside. And of course, there's nothing inside.
There's nothing in there. It's a rock, more rock.
Yeah, well, a lot of people have damaged these things. So, if you see on Ancient Aliens, or if you see these articles, talking about these stone spheres of Costa Rica, at the end of the day, they just seem like
they don't have any answers.
These creations by somebody of just perfect spheres. And they're not perfect, too. That's another claim. You'll see in books and articles, scientists will say, they're perfect. They're perfectly sphere. We've measured. They're not even off by 2 micromillimeters. It's not true. There's all kinds of flaws. They're not perfect.
They're man-made. They're handmade.
They're man-made.
Handmade. There's going to be some flaws, yeah.
Yeah. So in the end, we don't know who made them or for what purpose they were made. Were they created by ancient aliens? I think not. Do I like the idea of some super special race of extraterrestrials coming down from another parallel dimension upon this group of indigenous primitive people in the Costa Rican jungles? Of course. Only to teach them advanced mathematics and Riemannian geometry and introduce them to lasers, which allowed them to create these cool spheres. But it's not likely. More likely, it's 100% man-made. They're very cool, but we don't know why they were made and who made them.
Well, when you was first telling me this, and remember you and I was discussing it a little bit off air and all that stuff, it's one of those things, I'm the same way as I'm fascinated by those balls, by where did they come from? What was the purpose? I mean, why would you I understand creating a ball the size of a billiard ball or a softball or a baseball, but when you're talking about some of these enormous, large carvings, there has to be a reason behind them.
Yeah, well, you've seen in people's gardens nowadays, they'll have these orbs.
Yeah.
Just sit there. I think that's what it was. Maybe it was just a decoration.
And I understand that size, but when you're talking about a 16-ton.
Ooh, that's a big one, right?
Now that you like, there's a reason behind that. What was that done for?
It was an Olmec guy just trying to one-up his buddy. He'd be like, yeah?
Trying to get the girls.
I'll make one bigger than that.
Yeah, my yard art's bigger than your yard art. Yeah. Maybe that's what it is. It's just the redneck.
Maybe. Yeah. I thought about this. Maybe they're building a giant, like in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, they were building the boulder to roll down. They
roll on somebody? Yeah. Maybe so. Well, when you were talking about that and brought up the Olmec, I realized a lot of the things that I heard or knew about the Olmec was like we've talked about in the past, was things that I had just seen on television or browsed in an article here or there. And I wanted to look more into the whole Olmec society because it is a rather mysterious history about these peoples. And that's what I'm going to talk about more. That kind of links into this is what Kyle talked about is we're going to talk about the Olmec and what some of the main theories are where those people came from, because you don't realize how much older they are than some of the other cultures that were there. Now, it was I guess you could say maybe an antiques dealer or, he was a traveler at the time. His name was Jose Serrano. And I don't mean the Serrano from Major League that couldn't hit a curveball, okay? We're not talking about that guy. This was a Hispanic traveler, Jose Serrano. And in 1869, he was the first person to publish a description of the Olmec stone heads that we've all seen that he had actually found in the ground, interred, in situ, and there.
And those heads are cool, right?
They're awesome. Yeah, now here's what's wild. So the very first one that would have ever been discovered that they knew of, that was a written discovery. And I'm sure people knew about him, of course, but that's what's funny. It's like saying you've discovered something, but it was been there this whole time and everybody around you knew it. Really and truly, these people uncovered it. There was a farmer that was clearing some land outside a town of Veracruz in 1850. And he had uncovered this face looking up at him out of the dirt once he pulled and plowed some of the trees back. Well, Jose was traveling through that region in that area, and somebody told him, and he was real curious. He's like, So in 1862, he goes there. He's got to go see it. So he goes and he sees it. And at the time he sees it, it's partially exposed. So he's looking at it and he's like, He helps the guy uncover a bunch of it and the whole deal. Then, of course, I think he went back before. But anyway, like I said, he published the first description about it when they had completely uncovered it. Now, here's what's funny. Serrano believed that given the physical features of what he saw on that stone, that he was sure 100% that it was the depiction of an African.
I'd have to agree.
Yes.
And that's the first thing that stands out when you look at that is, man, doesn't look like anybody I've seen from South America.
Well, and we're going to talk about that. Now, look, this isn't our belief or somebody, we're not swaying either way. I'm just going to give you the facts of what people have believed in this whole time. And it's strange because I'm not a big fan of isolationism. I like to believe that people were covering this planet, traveling much as we do today. Now, like I say, Jose believes that it was African, and he said that he believed that it testified to the existence of what he said was unknown sophisticated culture. Now, here's what's pretty strange, too. The Maya people have a book, a sacred book of the Quechua that they call the Popol Vuh. And in that book, it claims that the Olmec people came to Mexico in ships of bark. And they believe that it means that black Africans sailed across the Atlantic Ocean long before Columbus. So long before all this, they believed it come. Now, here's what's wild. Here's something you got to wrap your head around, like you're talking about with this. It wasn't until in the 1930s. Up until that point, everybody believed, if you talk to anybody that was, in the circles of these archaeologists and things, that the oldest civilization in the Americas had been the Mayan. And the reason being is because of all the Mayan artifacts that was discovered throughout the Yucatan. It was stuff everywhere on the Gulf Coast of Mexico, Guatemala, everybody. All the archaeologists in the area was convinced that the Maya was what was the mother civilization, if you will, to all this other stuff. But they would notice this, and this is funny because we've talked about this when it talks about Egypt. Some of the Mayan artifacts, what they were calling Mayan artifacts, were different than most others. Subtly, but there was a lot of those that were all different, but they were a lot alike. So it was almost like a whole nother branch, like you got Nike and Reebok. Yeah, they're all shoes, but there's subtle differences in that's what they've noticed. They said that one of the differences was that some of the large carving heads had faces of more African-looking features than all the other Mayan works together. Okay, so all that, there was a few of those. So Mayan paintings and sculptures also had been quite varied, but the African-looking features was distinctly un-Mayan. So you could look at all of the stuff that they had. All of it looked the same, and then there was a whole group like,
Almost like it's two different groups,
It's
right?
exactly what they're talking about. Now, here's the thing. They often had, these faces had looked like masks. And we talk about, they had some jade mask stuff we'll get into. They had like a curious frown. They always had like a stare about them, things like that. It was really different, distinctly different than most of the Mayan stuff. Now, there's a fella named Marshall Seville, and he was the director of the Museum of the American Indian in New York. And in 1929, he classified these works as being from an entirely new culture, not Mayan. And he, of course, what people do believe was kind of an inappropriate way of saying this, he's the one that called them Olmec, which was a name first used in 1927. And the reason being is because of all the rubber trees in the area. Olmec means rubber people.
Oh, I got you.
That's what it means. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is in like Nahal. That's the language of the Aztec is what it is. So it means rubber people. Now, there's a fellow named Eric Thompson, and he actually helped decipher the Mayan calendar. And he refused to believe that there was a new culture that could be earlier than the Mayas. He's like, I've gone through all their history. They're all the same people. This is just what it is. But they had a special meeting in Mexico City in 1942. And that right there, there was a lot of arguing, a lot of going back and forth in 42. And they pretty much came down and said, okay, there is a difference. And these Olmec people predated the Maya. We know now that there's a separation there. They may look like it's blended together, but there is a separation. So the discovery now of this whole separate group that now we all know as the Olmecs basically threw a wrench into everything at that point.
Yeah.
Everything. Cast doubt on all kinds of stuff concerning American and South American, but total North American and South American prehistory. Everything changed at that point. Because here's this is what they say. There's what people are calling diverse, in a way, a very diverse looking people that they know, if this is representative of these skulls, who built huge sculptures. They had amazing skills, very skilled in working with their hands. They believe that they were actually inventors of that area for number and writing systems that the Maya used. They even actually had the game that the Maya talked about where they kick the rubber ball and it goes up through there.
Yeah,
the Olmec invented that. And in some of the stuff that they have found, some of the artifacts they found Olmec toys that they know weren't Mayan. They were Olmec, and they had wheels on them.
Wow, see?
So they're like, wait a second. Now, traditionally, we're going to go into this. Traditionally, they believe that they started in South America between 1400 and 1200 BC because of some Olmec remains that they were discovered down in a place near San Lorenzo in their shrine. But now it's been pushed back even deeper. They found more things now in the last few years that they make it believe it's a few hundred years older than that. So around 1600 BC is what they believe. They've traced the food back. And when I say the food, I'm talking about like crops. We're talking about farming. That's what they're talking about. They know in that area that farming began as far back as 5100 BC. So they're like, So like I said, I told you about San Lorenzo. That was what was found to be the very first Olmec center, was in San Lorenzo. Everything was there, but here's what's wild. It was all abandoned, completely abandoned. What they can tell is it just fell flat by 900 BC. Gone.
That's weird.
Really, exactly. Some of the people today, some of the scientists and archaeologists believe that they believe it was environmental changes, like we've talked about, because they said maybe certain rivers had changed, maybe it was a drought, different things like that could have caused crop problems, the whole deal, and they just had to abandon what was there. They just had to go, you know what? We love it here, but it won't hold us anymore.
Could have been their sky brothers and sisters picking them up.
That there's, you know what? There's a lot of stuff like that too. A lot of people believe that they popped down. Now, they say that following the decline of the San Lorenzo area there in Levanta, that it became the most prominent Olmec center, like we said, and it was abandoned from 900 BC. When they moved from San Lorenzo to Levanta, it went from 900 BC to 400 BC. In this area, they built the Great Pyramid, which is their Great Pyramid, if you will, of the Mesoamerican times. And even today, you go down there, it's 112 foot high earthen pyramid after 2,500 years of weather and rain and erosion, and yet it still stands 112 foot tall.
That's cool, man.
Now, they believe, too, that they were very, I guess you could say, in some sort of religious fashion, because they found buried in that area, all in the land there. They said it was very labor intensive what they did, but there was over 1,000 tons of smooth serpentine blocks, mosaic like patterns on this, almost like pavement on all this mosaic patterns. They had deposits, separate areas, deposits of polished jade, of pottery, of figurines, of mirrors that they had made out of like hematite, where they'd polished the stones to make mirrors.
That's cool.
48 separate deposits of this across the lands in that area. So we're going to go back to the heads. Right to date, there's only been 17 of the colossal heads found. Now, there's smaller ones, I think, that they found, like we're talking about, but the colossals. Now, in San Lorenzo, which is what we talked about, was the very first area that they, supposedly settled, there were 10. The first 10 were found in that area. Then they moved to Levanta. Levanta had 4. Then Tres Zapotes had 2. And then Rancho La Cobata had 1. So they kind of stacked it down through there. So towards the end, they were fewer and fewer and fewer. So it makes you wonder whether fewer and fewer the Olmecs, and there were less people to help transport the heads, and then that they had brought them with them, or maybe the craftsmen died off, so fewer and fewer knew how to do it. Now, the heads range in these sizes. Now, like the last one I told you about, the La Cobota head, and they're in the Rancho, is 3.4 meters high. Now, there's a pair in Tres Zapotes that's 1.5 meters high. And they've all been calculated between 25 and 55 tons is what that's the largest heads. So they're no joke.
Yeah, now 55 tons, that's a lot.
Well, they call them short tons is what it is. So, but it's basically 50 tons is what you're looking at, is something weighing like that. So that's an awful lot of stone. Here's something else that's strange. They were carved from single blocks of volcanic basalt. Now, they say that it was blocks, or what they even talked about, like you said, a boulder. Maybe there was a boulder that was already round, but it's all volcanic basalt. And these are found in the Tuxtla Mountains. Now, the Tres Zapotes heads were sculpted from basalt found at the summit of Sierra El Viga, which is a mountain in that Tuxtlas range. Now, the San Lorenzo and Levanta heads, they're carved from basalt in the southeastern side of this range. So they're all coming from the tops of the mountains where they're getting these rocks, but they're all in that little area. Now they were believed that they don't know. They were drugged down. Some people said they were floated down, but where they were come from, where all this basalt was found, was around 12 to 15 miles away. Then it was brought down, and they believe that it would have required around 1,500 people to move these stones from where they were found in those mountain ranges.
How
down
many miles
to start
did you say?
12 to 15.
So to move a 55-ton head.
Yeah.
Oh, this is before
it would have been the stone.
Yeah.
12 to 15 miles. They said it would have took 1,500 people and 3 to 4 months to move all that down in there. So you got to think this had to mean something for somebody.
Yeah, for
this
sure.
is something that there was some serious, business behind this. This wasn't just some craftsman doing it to put in somebody else's backyard. Now, they do know this. They do know that some of the monuments, like you're talking about with those balls, were destroyed. They don't know.
Yeah.
They knew that they found pieces that they're like, this was probably one of them.
I'm sure they found some of them in private collections, like I was talking about in the news section.
Well, they also know some have been recarved, had the faces chiseled off, and some more stuff recarved on the faces. Now, here's what's known. They don't know if it was because of how scarce the stone was, the work it would take to gather up the stone. Archaeologists don't know that. Or they also believed it could be some kind of ritualistic connotation to it. Like rulers changed hands, so they chiseled, much like in Egypt, they chiseled the face off that one and re-chiseled another one on there. Exactly. But they don't rule out internal conflict. And he's like, well, maybe it's just, the uprising of one side to the other, and that's how they're going to deface it when that guy's dead, not necessarily even ruler-based or even religious-based. It's just because I don't like you, so we're going to cover it over there. You look at all that stuff, it makes the idea of an invasion of the Spanish when the Olmec even less likely, or an invasion of anything else. Now, like we talked about before, they have this certain look to them. Flattened noses, wide lips. They have a headpiece, like a cap, almost like a old leather football helmet. And they believe that when they first saw them, they were like, well, those were the warrior kings of the Olmec. Those were their leaders, much like we have Mount Rushmore, that this is their Mount Rushmore. But people went to notice, and instantly they're like, that is very African in the resemblance of their face features, that it doesn't really go with a lot of. Now, there is some things that make you think, yeah, maybe they were still Mexican because of how it was, or, but you look at it, you're like, but no, not really. So they compared, like I said, back and forth, claims of, and there's been a lot of claims of pre-Columbian contact, that we've discussed on this show, but there's a lot of archaeologists and scholars rejected all this at first. They were like, there's no way. There's no way. These people just sprung up out of the jungles, like we've all, and like they always say, and then, this is just how it starts. Now, there was a fella named Ivan Sertima. Now, he passed away in 2009, and he was actually a Guyanese-born associate professor of African studies at Rutgers University. And he was believed to be the foremost authority on the African presence in ancient America. And he proved that many Olmec cultural traits were of African origin. Here's your quote. A study of the Olmec civilization reveals elements that so closely parallel ritual traits and techniques in the Egypto-Nubian world of the same period that it is difficult to maintain that all of these are due to mere coincidence. So he has studied all in Egypt, like we talked about, all of this stuff in Egypt, and then he goes back and he looks at some of the traits that's carried over into South America, that's into the Mayans and then the Aztecs, but come from the Olmecs. And he's like, there's way too many that link up, that draw lines from one another for this to just be two things that sprung up on their own that far apart. So this is where it brings us into a fella that passed away in 1579, a friar, Diego de Landa. Now, he was a Spanish bishop for the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of the Yucatan. Now, he became the bishop of that area. Not a good guy. Okay, we're gonna talk. It's kind of a conflicted things. He ran the Inquisition in that area, so much so that the level of abuse that he laid upon the Mayan people was viewed as very excessive and very unusual. That he would actually take the nobles of the Mayans and he would jail them and interrogate them in large numbers, and he would even basically subject them to an examination under hoisting, where he tied their hands up, pulled them up into trees, would hang rocks off of their feet, off of their limbs, limbs. Yeah, just do horrible things, basically trying to make you to confess. And the reason it was because is he had heard that they had first been taught the ways of the Christian, and then they had resorted back to idol worship. So he went down there and he went after him. But here's the thing that he did do, that he actually gathered a lot of this stuff while he was down there, a lot of the books, a lot of the information, and he wrote a lot of this down of what he saw when he came to, this whole thing. There was a ceremony that took place July 12th of 1562. There was a whole bunch of Mayan books. Now, it's disputed, this number of books. Some people say it's way more. Some people say there was just a small handful. But it's the codices of the Mayan people. Now, Landau wrote in his book that there was 27 of them. 27 books, and roughly 5,000 Maya cult images were all burned on July 12th.
Now, who wrote these books? The friar did?
No, the friar. No, not these books. All the books that are burning are the history of the Mayan people.
Yeah, who wrote those books? Does it say?
We don't know.
Oh, okay.
That's what we're getting at. This is the stuff that we've lost because of what went on. So it was passed into what they called the Black Legend of the Spanish in the Americas, okay?
Okay.
Because he believed, Landa did, the friar, that blacks, that's where the Olmecs came from, from the African people.
Probably in those books.
Exactly.
And it was erased. Yeah, man. This is a common thing that happens in history.
But he even says this. This is what he himself writes. And it says this, as far as the Maya and the Yucatan, he writes about this. Some old men of Yucatan say that they heard from their ancestors that this country was peopled by a certain race who came from the east, who God delivered by opening for them 12 roads through the sea. Now, that's what the friar wrote. Now, when you get into this stuff, and you talk about this, we always talk about these strange things. You can't leave out, of course, Zechariah Sitchin when it comes to people talking about all this ancient history and stuff. He was a big history junkie anyway. He actually wrote that one of the rare academic studies admitting that the Olmecs were Negroid Africans was Africa, and that the discovery of America by Leo Winter, professor of Slavic and other languages at Harvard University, based on racial features and other considerations, but mostly on linguistic analysis. And he concluded that the Olmec tongue belonged to the Mande group of languages that originated in West Africa between the Niger and Congo River. But writing in 1920, before the true age of Olmec remains became known, that he attributed their presence to Mesoamerican, to Arab seafarers and slave traders in the Middle Ages. So, before it was ever known, this Leo Werner guy, he thought it was from sailors that had brought them over, maybe. Slave traders, that would, he would go and round them all up, this, that, and the other. So there was a book that was published in 2004 by a fellow named Richard Dell. And the book is called The Olmecs, America's First Civilization. And in there, he has a paragraph here that says this: the origins of Olmec culture have intrigued scholars and lay people alike since Tres Zapotes. Colossal head. Number 1. A gigantic stone human head with vaguely Negroid features was discovered in Veracruz 140 years ago. Since that time, Olmec culture and art have been attributed to seafaring Africans, Egyptians, Nubians, Phoenicians, Atlanteans, Japanese, Chinese, and other ancient wanderers. As often happens, the truth is infinitely more logical, if less romantic. The Olmecs were Native Americans who created a unique culture in southeastern Mexico's Isthmus of Tehuantepec. And archaeologists now trace Olmec origins back to pre-Olmec cultures in the region, and there is no credible evidence for major intrusions from the outside. Furthermore, not a single bona fide artifact of Old World origin has ever appeared in an Olmec archaeological site, or for that matter, anywhere else in Mesoamerica. So right there, he dismisses all the theories and all the evidence of any and all transoceanic contact. He doesn't believe it. At all.
Yeah.
But we're also given no further information on the pre-Olmec cultures, and that the Olmecs, just where they come from, nothing. Because we don't really know here's what's funny. What's a bona fide artifact of New World and Old World? What is it? They're so often identical to one another that we find, how would you know if one was Old World that was brought over? You're talking about there's going to be a stone scraper brought over from Egypt and left in South America. You wouldn't know if it was, chipped out of wood, chipped out of stone in South America,
right, yeah,
on the whole deal. But like I said, now, according to him, the Olmecs, this is what it was an isolated group that had little or no contact, right? Nothing with any of the other tribes in this whole area. He also says this: we do not know what these people called themselves or if they even had a term that encompassed all the inhabitants of Olman. There is no evidence that they formed a single unified ethnic group, and almost certainly no Olmec considered people living more than a few hours' walk away as members of his or her own group. Nevertheless, the numerous independent local cultures were so similar to one another that modern scientists consider them a single generic culture. So basically, according to him, the Olmecs rose up independently in their little niche in the forest without any influence from anybody, and then they didn't walk anywhere. They didn't talk to anybody. It would be like us living in this town. We don't talk to anybody 10 miles down the road, but yet out of nowhere, we start making giant statues out of basalt, stone heads, huge drainage systems in the towns that we live in. It
doesn't make sense.
It does not make sense
at
all. He goes on, and he talks about some other stuff and some different things. Now, there was a fella named Paul Barton, and he actually wrote on February 28th of 2001, he published this thing called The Perspective, and it was the Olmecs, an African presence in early America. All right. Now, he wrote that studies done by Clyde Winters show that the Olmecs used the Mende script, which is a writing system used among the Mandinkas and other Africans in West Africa. When the writing on Olmec monuments were translated, it was found that the language spoken by the Olmecs was Mende.
Oh, isn't that convenient?
The Olmecs practiced a religion and astronomical science identical to those practiced by Africans in the Mali region and Nigeria today. That the Olmecs studied the Venus complex in astronomy. And today, the Ono and the Bambara, who are famous sea and river travelers, have studied the same complex for 1,000 years.
Well, that's the end of it then. There's no doubt.
Well, there's some conflicting stuff when it comes to them talking about the writings of the Olmec, because some people say that they've got it deciphered. Other people say that there wasn't enough that they have found in order to know exactly what was written. Now, there's no doubt, of course, that archaeological discoveries prove that Olmecs built all these structures, these giant pyramids, these giant heads. They also did mining. They had high levels of art, had hieroglyphics. They also had the concept of zero in their writings. They understood that. They understood positional numbers. They even had great public buildings. And they were the first in Mesoamerica to have a calendar. The long count calendar is not Mayan. It's Olmec. That's where it comes from.
Right. I've heard that. Yeah.
They've had religion. They've had the study of mathematics and astronomy. They also had stonemasonry. And what have we talked about? Farming. Now, Sabas Whitaker, he wrote a book called Africans in the Americas, Our Journey Throughout the World. And he says from an ancient stela found in Zlapata, it is clear that the Olmec recognized the tree of life. This stela also confirms that the Olmec were some black people who came to Mexico in ships made of bark and landed at Pontacachan. These people are frequently depicted in the Mayan books and writings carrying trade goods. The tree also depicts 7 branches and 12 roots. The 7 branches probably represent the 7 major clans of the Olmec people. The 12 roots of the tree extending into the water from the boat probably signifies the 12 roads through the sea. Now, here's what really gets wild. After 300 BCE, there's no more evidence of the Olmec civilization.
Yeah, that is weird.
What happened to them to this day remains a mystery. The remains of these people cannot survive. There's no graves. The reason there's no graves is because the acidity level in the soil eats the bodies up.
Right.
There's no concrete evidence of disease or war, of famine, of anything like the such that you would think would be going on that would have wiped them out. There's none. Now, like we said, there was some changes in the land, changes in the environment that they believe that could have possibly made them move, but they don't understand how they just vanished. Now, there's even been some people say that they believe that it was due to a civil war, and that population could have thinned out even through this war and then slowly disappear through history. And disease is like war. It could thin out the population enough of these people to make it to where it would never rebound, to where you wouldn't have a viable breeding group.
And they were just absorbed by the other cultures as they moved on, right?
Exactly. Now, they call it the epi-Olmec culture now. That says when the Olmec culture went into decline, it didn't really disappear entirely. It kind of evolved into what people are, the scientists now and the historians refer to as epi-Olmec. And that's a culture that links sort of the classic Olmec to the Veracruz culture. And then that's when they begin to thrive, and they moved up to the north in the Olmec lands, and about 500 years later. The existence of these Olmec people and their culture and even their beginnings and all this stuff in the old Mexico has always posed a problem for scholars and historians and archaeologists. They vanished. We don't know concretely why they vanished, but without any hint as to where they went and why they went that way. We really don't know about anything more about these people than we do when we first found out about them. We don't know where they came from, and we don't know where they went. We have a small window that was there, and pretty much it sounds to me like history was destroyed back in the 1500s, and now we just have to try our best to piece together what we think and what we can figure out of where these people came from.
And we're back with Expanded Perspectives. A very interesting story. I like the Olmec story, and I have to agree. I mean, when I looked at those heads, the giant heads, the first time, this was years ago, they do look black to me. And
yes.
Are you familiar with the Black Egyptian hypothesis?
Yes.
Which talks about there's a group of people that theorize that the Egyptians were actually a black culture, and that before modern day Egypt, I'm not talking about now, but when Egypt was at its height, ancient Egypt was at its height, that the face like on the Sphinx and things was actually a lion, and that some of the early carvings were actually just like these Olmec faces, and they were changed to look more like the Egyptians later. There's even people that claim that some of the pharaohs' faces actually have a lot of features that black people have. So, I mean, it's just a theory. It's called the Black Egyptian hypothesis, and I know it's been met with a lot of profound disagreement, of course, by Egyptologists and other archaeologists. They always get to seem so mad when anybody brings up just the possibility of something else. And I'm always like, but why would it make you mad to consider the possibility?
What makes me mad is whenever they don't want to consider the possibility because the people are black.
Is that what it is?
It's the way
is
a
it
lot
pure
of
racism, or is it
sure
just
feels
because
that
they just
way.
don't like anybody telling them that this is different than the way it is? I mean, you could be right, 100%.
It's sure a lot of it feels like racism, and that pisses me off to no end. I'm like, look, the people did it. Dude, it's just how it is, man. It doesn't matter.
That there was trade. We know that there was trade between ancient Egypt and South America with the depictions of cartouches showing corn, cocaine. We've talked about it several times on the show. Maybe the Olmecs were actually Egyptians. I mean, like you said, they didn't call themselves Olmecs.
Yes,
that was given to them. Maybe they were Egyptians.
Well,
and maybe the reason they disappeared is because, like you're saying, times were hard. They were having agricultural problems. There was some kind of crop disaster, and they just packed up their stuff and went back to Egypt.
Yeah, maybe the reason they went is maybe they were running for something, much like the people that first came here.
Yeah, maybe
we were looking for more religious freedoms whenever we came here.
Yeah,
the thing is this, like we always talked about, folks. History is very foggy and hazy, and can only be sorted out by you. Everyone listening to this right now, that's listening to our voice in your ears, you have to make up your own mind. There's so much information out there, man. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to Kyle. Don't listen to any of us. Don't listen to anybody. Make up your own mind about history and about what really happened and just what makes more sense. We see what happens today is what we live it. Little lies being told everywhere. So you don't think that didn't happen back then? I mean, there's stories and things shifted around to meet people's ideas and to meet what they're trying to put out there and their end goal. So I think there's a lot more to it. I think what upsets me is all the things, maybe there was other races in between the Olmec and the Maya and the Aztec, but since all that stuff was destroyed, we'll never know about those people. They faded into the obscurity of history, never to be spoken of. Nobody will ever know that they started, they had a great culture, and they vanished, and they have been wiped away like your hand through the sand from the books of history.
Just how many other cultures have done the same thing?
Yes.
Far older cultures that were here and gone.
Exactly. Over and over and over.
We know a lot about ancient history, but I think there's far more we don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
And you should keep an open mind. Keep an expanded perspective. You should keep an open mind on these things, like Cam's talking about. Go do some research. Read it, and then you formulate your own hypothesis, right?
Yes.
Very, very interesting. Well, I want to thank everybody for being here today. Don't forget, if you like the show, you can write us a review on iTunes. Also, if you want to hear more of Expanded Perspectives, we have Expanded Perspectives Elite. You can go to the website, expandedperspectives.com, sign up for that. $5 a month gets you an extra episode every Thursday, as well as access to the entire back catalog. If you would like to share a story or experience of your own with Expanded Perspectives, you can email the show at expandedperspectives@yahoo.com, or you can go to the website and click on the Contact tab at www.expandedperspectives.com. I hope everybody has a good week, Cam. I hope you have a good week, sir. I hope your week gets better. I hope you get over your rash.
Oh, yeah. I got to get out of here. I got to go doctor myself, folks.
Right. I got to go back to some boring continuing education courses.
Yes.
But I'm going to plow through it. For everybody at Expanded Perspectives Elite, we'll be speaking to you on Thursday. For everybody else, we'll talk to you next Monday. Take care, folks. I'm Kyle Filson. He's Cam Hale.
Peace.